Hello, friends. This is Shashi Agarwal, Economics and Law Classes. I welcome you all. Today, our topic is inflation. This is the complete topic of inflation. The effect of inflation I will be covering in the next video. In this video, we are going to cover the meaning of inflation, what are the various types of inflation, what are the causes of inflation on the demand side as well as on the supply side, and what are the measures which are adopted by the government to check the inflation, and what are the various theories of inflation, demand pull inflation and the cost push inflation. If you find my video useful, please do like it, share it, and also subscribe my channel Shashi Agarwal Economics and Law Classes. So this is my app, Addressum app, which you could download from the Google Play Store. It provides free study material, free mock test to the student of commerce, economics, and management. So it also has structured courses, business economics, macroeconomics, Indian economy, and principles of economics. First of all, we will understand the meaning of inflation. What is the meaning of inflation? Inflation is a state of rise in general price level in the economy. When the prices are rising at a continuous level, then we say it's a inflation. Persistent rise in price is called inflation. Some of the economists say it's a phenomenon of rising price level. But some of the economists, it's a monetary phenomena because the people they have money, so they demand goods, and the goods are not the supply of goods not as according to the demand. So there is a rise in the price level. According to Keynes, inflation is a post full employment phenomena because after the full employment, the people are demanding goods, but the production cannot be increased. So it's a post full employment phenomena. A persistent rise means continuous rise in prices is called inflation. So these are the few definition by Gregory. Inflation is increase in the quantity of purchasing power. According to Peterson, the word inflation in the broadest possible sense refers to any increase in the general price level which is sustained and unknown seasonal in character. Colborn defined inflation as the stage of too much money chasing few goods. Shapiro, inflation is simply a persistent and appreciable rise in general price level. According to Keynes, inflation is of two types, semi-inflation and open or full inflation. Semi-inflation before the level of full employment. So if there is increase in the quantity of money of supply, the people will have more purchasing power, so they will demand more goods. But as it is before full employment, it will lead to increase in output and employment. Prices will not increase in the same portion as the quantity of money. Such inflation is mainly due to the hindrance in the mobility of the factors of production. Open or full employment, increase in the quantity of money after full employment leads to general rise in price level, which is called open, full, true, or absolute inflation. We could show it this by graphically. So this is the full employment level. So this is the money supply. So here the money supply, because increasing, so the output is also increasing. So before the full employment is the semi-inflation, after it becomes the full employment. Here the supply of money is increasing, but the supply is not increasing of the goods and services. So the price level goes on increasing. So it's the true inflation, open inflation. So generally, there are two reasons of the inflation. First is demand pull inflation. Rise in prices mainly due to the increased demand for goods. As the population grow at a rapid rate, they demand more goods, but supply of goods is less. Demand is rising because of the growth of population, because the people they have more money at their disposable, so they demand more goods, but the production is less than the demand. People have unaccounted money, and there's more money supply, and the government prints more notes. So these are the reasons due to which the inflation exists. Cost push inflation due to the rise in the cost of production due to rise in input prices, increased wages, but not increase in productivity, rise in indirect taxes, hike in oil prices, and poor technology, etc. So what are the various types of inflation? We could classify inflation on the basis of degree of common control. It is of two types: open inflation and suppressed inflation. Open inflation refer to a situation at which no steps are taken by the government to control the rising prices. So prices are allowed to rise without any effort on the part of the government to check it. So goods, they are distributed through price mechanism on the basis of the price which is determined by the demand and supply. Suppressed inflation, which is here the rising prices, that are checked by the government by taking administrative steps like the rationing of the goods, by imposing price restriction. So it is more dangerous because when the government lifts the control, it will increase at a very dangerous rate. Under suppressed inflation, price mechanism becomes unoperative because it is the price which is fixed by the government, and black market, corruption, and resources, they are inequitably distributed. We could classify on the basis of time: wartime inflation, post-war inflation, and peacetime inflation. Wartime inflation, during the course of war, then the things which are needed more in war, they are manufactured more, and the consumer goods, they are produced less. That take place during the course of war in order to meet war expected common increase the supply of money. But during war, production is more of war material than the goods for public, so the consumer goods price will rise. Post-war inflation, tendency of inflation persists even after the war, mainly due to the government have to spend large amount on repair and reconstruction of the damaged property, and the government uh, abolish various taxes and the loan that is repaid to the public, so the public have more purchasing power, so they will demand more goods and the price level will increase. During peacetime, inflation as underdeveloped country require huge resources for boosting their development process, so it will lead to printing of the new notes, which in turn leads to more money in circulation, and it will lead to rise in price level. On the basis of rate of inflation, it is the creeping inflation, slow price rise, 3% rise in price. Such an inflation is not bad for the economy. It is essential for the growth of economy. Walking inflation, when it intensify and gains the momentum, and over a decade price rise between 30 to 40%, it is called walking inflation. Running or galloping inflation, then there is a rapid increase in very short period, 80 to 100%. Such inflation has adverse effect on the middle and poor class. It also has a bad impact on production. It also discourages saving. Hyperinflation, which the inflation which rise at a very unexpected rate, at a dangerous rate, it is hydra-headed inflation. It puts the entire economy out of the gear. On the basis of rate of inflation, so this is the creeping inflation, this is the walking inflation, and this is the running inflation, and this is the galloping inflation. Sectoral sporadic inflation, on the basis of scope, when inflation affect only a particular part, particular only sector, or cover one or two words. Comprehensive inflation, which is not confined to a given part of the country but covers the entire. It is not confined to given specified goods or specified sector but cover the whole economy. According to process, wage-induced inflation, powerful labor organization demand higher wages, and it increases the cost of goods. And the big organization, they want to have more profit, so they make cartels and fix higher prices by adding huge margin. Deficit induced, when the government has deficit, expenditure is more than the revenue, so government will resort to deficit financing, so it will have more money supply and less production. And demand pull inflation, aggregate demand is more than the aggregate supply. So these are the causes of inflation from the demand side, which we will understand one by one. When the government, there is an increase in public expenditure, because when the government start building roads, bridges, or something else, it will give more employment to the people, so they will have more income. So there will be increase in purchasing power, and they will be demanding more goods and services. After full employment, there will be no increase in production, so the price rise will increase. And the second reason is deficit financing. When the government cover its deficit by printing more notes, it means more money in circulation. It will lead to increase in monetary income, and demand for goods will increase. Cheap monetary policy, because the government is providing because the Reserve Bank of India, uh, there is a cheap monetary policy. It means the loans, they are available at a very low interest rate. So people will be having more borrowing, and they will have more money supply. So they will demand more goods and services, and there will be increase in price level. Increase in disposable income, increase in the income of the consumers, demand for goods increase. Due to increase in consumers income, there will be they will be demanding more, and the production will be less. When the people, they have more black money which is unaccounted money, which they have not specified any source, they have not paid any tax, that will be spent on luxury and conspicuous consumption. When the prospects of profits are high, then the firm, they increase their investment. There will be more capital formation, and there will be demand for capital goods, and the prices of capital goods will increase. When the government reduces tax, so the people's real and monetary income increase. Real income means purchasing power will increase, so that will be increase in effective demand. So these are the causes of inflation on the supply side. Supply side means refer to the quantity of available goods or output on which people spend their income. There is less production. That is the one of the significant reason, because demand is more than the supply. Supply is less because there is less production. And second is artificial scarcity. Hoarder and profiteer, they create artificial security by hoarding the goods, and it will give rise to the prices. When the government adopts huge taxes, so it will discourage the producer to produce less. Shortage of goods, grains like pulses, audible, etc., so their prices will increase. When there is an industrial dispute like lockout strikes, the so there will be less production. And when the new invention take place, the production will go down. Technician and specialists, they are paid their remuneration during the intervening period, so they will be demanding goods. So there will be lack of raw material, and the agriculture is suffer due to natural calamities like earthquake, flood, drought. So there will be less production. And when the producer, they produce more luxury goods than the goods which are needed by the masses of the society. During wartime, the goods are produced for wartime, the which are needed during war. So there will be less production of the consumer goods. And there may be some international causes like hike of petrol, diesel, and petroleum product, which will enhance the cost of everything. Industrial policy of the government may be very restrictive, so it will be having a discouraging effect. They will be producing less. And there will be some obstacles in the production, like the supply of electricity, coils, means of transport, etc., becomes erratic when the production slow down. So these are the measures to check the inflation: monetary measures, fiscal measures, and the other measures. So monetary measures, which are adopted by the Reserve Bank of India to control the supply of money. In order to achieve the price stability, a Reserve Bank of India, that is the Apex Bank, that regulates the supply of monetary policy during the inflation, they adopt their money policy. The purpose is to contract the money supply. So they adopt quantitative as well as qualitative measure to check the supply of money. So control over money, first measure. Government should impose strict restriction on the issue of money by the central bank. There will be less supply of money. The people will be having less purchasing power. Second is the credit control. Central bank should pursue credit contraction policy. It should adopt their money policy. It should use quantitative and the qualitative instruments. It should increase the bank rate. It will enhance the interest rate. And they should also raise minimum cash reserve ratio, so the bank will have lesser cash for the borrowing purpose, lending purpose. And they should sell security in the open market. They should also adopt the qualitative measures like credit rationing, enhancing the margin requirement, and also moral persuasion for the member banks to restrict the credit. Uh, During inflation, the old currency is taken out of the circulation and the new currency is printed. So there is a demonetization of the old currency. So fiscal measures which are related to the expenditure and revenue policy. During inflation, the government should do less public expenditure and it should increase the public debt. In order to reduce the private expenditure, it is essential that private sector's purchasing power should be absorbed by the public borrowing. The people's money should go to the government, so their purchasing power will be curtailed. It could be done through the sale of debentures and bonds and delay in the payment of old debts. Payment of old debt that fall due should be postponed for some time so the people may not acquire purchasing power. And the government can impose new taxes and could also raise the old rates of old taxes. So there should be overvaluation of money. Overvaluation means when the rupee becomes strong, like earlier we used to have uh, by giving 75 rupees, obtaining $1. Now we could have $1 at the rate of rupees 70. So the rupee becomes more strong. So it will encourage import and discourage export. And during inflation, the government should print new notes less. So the other measures the government should take more steps to increase the production, and it should produce those goods whose prices are likely to rise rapidly. So the government, there should be more supply. It will be checking a price, and there should be proper commercial policy. Goods which are in demand, they should be produced more. Their export should be discouraged, and there should be proper investment policy. The goods, investment should be in those areas, those goods which are needed by the masses, and there should be proper price control and rationing system to check the price rise, and control over the distribution of profit of these joint stock companies. The joint stock company, they should distribute less profit. It will reduce the purchasing power of the shareholder, and their demand for goods and services will go down. And the government should adopt proper wage policy, because the higher wage, which without productivity, gives rise to inflationary pressure. So now our topic is theories of inflation, demand pull inflation, and the cost push inflation. So this is my app, which could be downloaded from the Google Play Store. So it's not there's also available at my blog. Demand pull inflation. It is the oldest theory of inflation. It is also called the first generation theory, which was prevalent before 1970. Most of the economists agree that inflation is a demand pull inflation. Continuous price rise take place due to the rising demand over available supply of output, because the demand is more than the production. Inflation refers to a situation which aggregate demand at the existing price level is more than the aggregate supply. So inflation arises because of the excessive demand. According to demand pull inflation, the general price level rises because the demand for goods and services exceed the supply which is available at the existing rate. According to demand pull inflation, the general price level rises because the demand for goods and services exceeds the supply available at the existing rate. According to Peterson, demand pull inflation, general price level rises because the demand for goods and services exceed the supply available at the existing rates. So demand pull inflation could be shown through this graph. So here, this is our aggregate supply, which becomes parallel to y-axis. So here is the demand. So this is the price and this is the output. The demand rises to D1. So the price is P1. Demand rises to D2. The price rises to P3. So the demand rises to D3. The price is P3. And demand rises to D4. The price is P4. So yeah, from this level, as we see, as the demand rises, the output also increases. So the price also increases, but not in the same ratio. But when after reaching the full employment, so there is a demand, and the demand curve rises to D5, and here we see there is a rise in the price level but no corresponding rise in the level of output. This is the explanation when demand increases from D to D1, D2, D3, D4, and D5. Price increases from B1 to B3, B4, and B5. When demand rises from D1 to D2, D3, D4, along with the price rise, production also increases. Such a price rise is known as a semi-inflation. But after reaching the full employment, any increase behind demand leads to only price rise. It is true inflation because it is not followed by increase in the production. So these are the causes of inflation. Quantity theory of money. After full employment, increased quantity of money leads to rise in price level. Quantity of money is identified as the sole cause of inflation. Keynesian theory, according to Keynes, the aggregated demand has two components, consumption plus investment. When consumption expenditure or there is a rise in consumption expenditure, or there is a rise in investment, or there is a rise in both, so the price level will rise. Modern quantity theory of money. This theory was given by Milton Friedman. According to this theory, the main cause for demand pull inflation is the excessive increase in the supply of money as compared to the demand. Now we will cover the second theory, that is the cost push inflation theory. In this situation, there is rise in the price on the one hand, but on the other hand, there is a fall in output and employment. As Kampenga, cost inflation is the consequences of rising cost. It is characterized by insufficiency of aggregate demand, unemployed resources, and excess capacity. After 1916, America and other developed nations, prices were rising. On the other hand, production was falling. So economists concluded inflation is possible at that situation where aggregate demand is reducing, but the cost of production is rising. So that inflation is known as a cost push inflation. The basis of cost push theory of inflation is that organized groups, both business and labor, establish higher prices for their product and services. Then there will be then that would prevail in perfectly competitive market, and we could show it in this manner. So this is our aggregate supply curve becomes parallel to y-axis. So this is the situation of full employment, and at full employment level, we will produce the level of M3. So initially, our this is our demand curve, and this is our SS supply curve. So they will cut at E point. So this is the production. As the rise in the cost of production, so the supply curve will shift to SS1, and the equilibrium point at E1. Here, the production is reduced from M to M1. Then again, there is a rise in the cost of production. So the supply curve is S1, S2. So the equilibrium level is E2. So again, here the price is P2, and the level of output is M2, which is less than the M1. So DD is the demand curve, SS is the supply curve. We compare it to y-axis after A. Point A represents full employment, output is M3. This is the initial supply curve, intersect DD at E point. OM will be the output and OP is the price. When the cost of production rise, new supply curve is S1S and cuts DD at E1. Now the output is less. If the cost production rises to S2S, then it cuts the DD at E2, and now the output is M2, which is less, and the price is P2. So what are the causes of cost push inflation? Imperfect competitive economy. So there is an increase in the rate of wage when the labor market is imperfect and there is a strong trade union and they demand more wages, but the productivity is not, they demand more wages, but the productivity is same. So there is no increase in productivity. So they are putting pressure to increase the wage rate without enhancing the productivity. When the big organization they want to have more profit, it's a situation of monopoly or oligopoly. So firm produce less, than the demand. They will add more margin. And there is an increase in the key of cost of key inputs when the prices of key inputs like coil steel and prices rise manifold at international market conditions. So it will lead to more cost push inflation.